Hey you all, welcome back to the Three Rings. And today we are talking about religion and government and how when they are too closely tied together, when they work too much together, a lot of death and destruction can follow and a lot of freedoms can be taken away. Here in America, we are seeing the rise of Christian nationalism, which is extremely dangerous in my opinion, and we'll be covering that quite a bit in this video. But also overseas in Iran, Mahsa Amini, a 20-year-old or 22-year-old person, was killed because they were not wearing a head covering by the morality police of Iran. And this is just crazy that there is a thing called the morality police in a government, and seeing how closely tied religion is in that area to the laws of the country and to the president of that country, and how they conduct themselves and how they will treat people if those laws are broken is something I think we should be wary of, because I think it is also happening here in the US with the rise of Christian nationalism. So let's dive into the subject of how religions can be so dangerous when tied too closely to government, and the amount of power they can take out on the people, and the amount of destruction and tyranny that they can bring. So I personally was raised conservative Christian. I was actually raised in a conservative Christian cult called Nationalism, and this cult was not great, very bad, very sexist, racist. Guy thought he was a prophet. Ended up he wasn't, obviously, because the internet proved all of his prophecies wrong. But at the end of the day, he deceived a lot of people, made a lot of money, and was an evangelical, all of those things. And the way I grew up, obviously, when you are brainwashed and grown in a movement of religious extremism, you can see, once you get out of it, how easily people can be brainwashed, and you can see the effects of brainwashing and how dangerous it can be, because quite simply, you believe what you believe is right because it's all you hear 24/7 when you're at church with the people you're around. And if you're in a more conservative area in general, politically, nothing's really challenging your point of view when you're in these conservative ideologies and mindsets and movements. Being raised in that, seeing the rise of ultra-conservative Republicans, MAGA Republicans, evangelicals, all of these people uniting behind someone like Donald Trump and almost treating him like their own prophet, their chosen one, is something that I have seen myself growing up in the community and cult I grew up in, which was very toxic and bad, right? But you don't realize until you get out of it. You're like, oh my goodness, what was that, right? And so seeing these patterns repeat, but on a much larger scale with our political system and with our government, is something that is definitely scary. So let's talk about how Christianity has actually been used as a tool for violence by many a country and government. Since the time of Jesus's, coming on the scene and bringing forth the gospel and all that, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, 178 million people have died due to Christian civilizations conquering, colonizing, spreading disease, and doing everything that the Europeans did, right? Most of Europe was Christian, and it was Spain who invaded the South Americas and destroyed Aztec culture and built churches over the indigenous cities of the people who originally lived there, killing millions, also spreading disease like smallpox, and some of them were constructed to spread the diseases. They knew that the indigenous cultures couldn't handle the sickness because they had never experienced it, so they purposely brought over disease, which is just insane and so horribly wrong. So you have Spain invading South America, you have the English coming to North America, and many other groups of people trying to find religious freedom from Great Britain, but then they took away the freedoms of indigenous cultures. Christianity has been used as a tool for colonization for a long time. In the Bible, the Apostle Paul talks about, going out and creating followers for Jesus. He was very big on spreading the gospel to everywhere, especially Rome. and Rome was the biggest empire at the time. So his whole thing, being an evangelist to others, really is what started this whole idea that, everyone should believe in Jesus. Even though as humans we are more diverse than just one singular belief. There are 1,000 ways to get rich, right? There's 1,000 ways to paint a painting. But then when religion comes along, it's like, no, there's only one way to live a fulfilling life and have everlasting peace. And that's just simply not true. There are thousands of religions out there, thousands of spiritual practices that can bring people, I think, a lot of peace and a lot of love. But Christianity came along and was like, hey, I'm the only way, and you gotta get rid of all the other stuff. So this really primed it as a great religion to be like, hey, we're gonna go in and say, you need God, and if you don't, want God, we'll kill you. And this happened in the Crusades with wanting to claim the Holy Land back. And this has happened in other religions as well. But Christianity has an extremely high death toll. And I think this is something we should look at as a society. And if you're a Christian watching this, maybe you should reevaluate everything that Christianity has done. Now, Jesus has some great principles and some great things to talk about, much like Buddha, Confucius, and many other, I believe, really cool people of that time that had great ideas. But I don't believe those ideas should have been formed into religions that have now been used to manipulate and destroy and overall conquer the world. And Christianity is a tool for conquerors. So atheist countries actually also have a pretty high death toll, because in countries that basically abolished any worship, saying, hey, we don't believe in any gods or any god, they would be persecuting people who did believe in religion, and that also caused violence. And then they also obviously conquered people and did all the same things Christian nations did. So their death toll ranges in about the 130 millions. And also really high on the list is Buddhism. Buddhism has around 83 million people killed by Buddhist cultures and that religion. Now I'd have to do more studying into the conquering that went on there, but the fact is, no religion is without having blood on its hands. But Christianity is the number one religion that has been used to cause a lot of violence and a lot of hurt in our world. So let's jump onto the topic of Christianity and Christian nationalism here in the United States. So Christian nationalist has been kind of a buzzword, I feel like, for the last few years, but I've definitely been seeing a lot more content on it lately, and I believe some of that's due to just election cycles coming up, certain networks wanting to push the idea that, hey, the Republican Party might be kind of crazy because they're Christian nationalists and vote for Democrats, which is a smart move. And I do agree that Christian nationalism is an extremely dangerous idea. Christian nationalists believe that America is God's country, and in order for God to continue blessing us, we need to get back to our roots of Christianity, Bibles in schools, prayers, and all of us saying the Pledge of Allegiance. But what Christian nationalists forget is our country isn't a Christian country. Some of our founding fathers didn't even believe in God. Benjamin Franklin, while he may have been a theist and believed in some higher being, was not a Christian, nor did he make much mention to God ever. Same with Thomas Jefferson. He actually hated miracles and wasn't really into the supernatural, so he literally edited out Jesus' miracles from his Bible. That doesn't sound very evangelical or Christian to me. Yet people will be like, our founding fathers intended for us to be a Christian nation. This Christian nation was built on Christianity, or Christianity is the foundation of this nation. Religious freedom was a foundation of this nation. It was because of the Church of England and people wanting to practice other religions that people came to America. And if we take that right away for other people to practice their religion, or if we uphold Christianity as a superior religion, as the state religion, as the religion of the United States, now having a superior religion, right, in the eyes of the country, in the eyes of a certain group, by elevating it, you are now going to have people who will think it's okay to demonize and harass people who believe differently. And while I believe these people who say they are Christian nationalists think what they are doing is right, because trust me, I have been a Christian before, I've been conservative Christian, In your brain, you think, oh my goodness, I'm so right, we need to save the world. But at the end of the day, you're actually not. And all of us can fall into that, whether it's conservative or super liberal point of views. Whatever it is, we can definitely fall into the trap of thinking our way is the only way to save the world. And it's not. And that's why Christian nationalism is dangerous. It's this idea that we need one way, one God, one religion to be state authorized, and a nation under God to make this nation the best. But what makes things amazing is diversity. And sorry, but Christianity is not a very diverse belief. It wants you to give up all other beliefs and believe in Jesus. But we live in a world with way more than that. And if you take people's rights away and say, hey, you can't get abortions, you can't marry the same sex because our religious texts deem that sinful. And you say, yeah, you can worship other gods, but really your religion is sending you to hell. That's going to empower people to harass and hurt others. And that is really, really dangerous. So we need to back up from this idea that nation and religion should be so closely tied together. In fact, they shouldn't. And our Constitution says it. It says there shall not be a state-authorized religion. And Thomas Jefferson again says, hey, the separation of church and state is a good thing. If we even look back historically, every monarchy back in the day, right? A lot of the monarchies in Europe, the kings thought they were appointed by God. You can go back to Egypt even. The pharaoh was a god or an incarnation of God. And I believe that it was the same in countries like China. Way back in the day, you were an emperor, you were a king, you were a god or a son of God, right? These people elevated themselves to divinity. And when you tie yourself to divinity and making people believe that you're a god, and you have all this tradition built around you and using religion to manipulate your subjects, it's dangerous because being a god means you can't do any wrong, right? You're infallible, you're untouchable, you're immortal. And this is something I have again seen with Trump. People will put aside any of the wrongs he's done because they're like, no, he's the best, he's what we need to save this nation, when he is an extremely flawed man who, tried to overturn an election, tried to rile up an insurrection, yet people will be like, no, that's all fake, that's not right. And trust me, I used to believe that way with certain things. When people would challenge us on our points of views and the movement we were in way back in the day, we would listen, but at the end of the day, our brain's like, nah, none of that's true, it's just lies, or they got it wrong. And we'd never look into it until we started looking into it, because we're like, maybe these people are onto something. So this worship of leaders as deities, right, is dangerous. And it was super dangerous back in history, and it's super dangerous now. We truly can't go back to a system of time religion with government. It is a violent past, and it will lead us to a violent future. And it's really, really dangerous. So what is the solution? So what is the solution to curbing Christian nationalism, or curbing the idea that any religion becomes superior in any nation, but especially here in America, since that's where I live and where I'm seeing this movement get a little more momentum than I think it should. So we should do what America was originally doing when it got away from Great Britain. It came to America so it wouldn't have to be a part of the Church of England. They wanted freedom to worship however they liked. And that's super important. That's a great thing. And you should be able to worship Allah, you should be able to worship God, you should be able to worship Satan, whoever you want, as long as you aren't harming anyone with your beliefs, in the sense of like, oh, hey, my belief is saying I should kill you. That's dangerous, right? We need to stop any of that happening. But you should have the right to worship whoever you want. And what we do need to reel back is allowing religion to get into politics. We, as people going into politics, whether we're religious or atheist or agnostic, need to go into it with the idea that we are here to serve the community and keep the community going, and we need to be there with love and empathy, not with pushing a Christian ideology on people who, quite frankly, don't want to be Christian. You should not take political office so that you can push your ideology on someone and take away their rights. if you're a public servant, you should be going into politics and being a public servant to make your community better, even if that means that some of your religious and personal views might not be the thing that you're doing to help the community. Maybe you helping the community is making sure they have an abortion clinic, but you don't believe in abortion. But because of love and understanding and empathy, you do it anyway because you think people should have the right to freedom, right? That's the kind of leaders we need, and that's the kind of leader I want to become, and I think we want to become as the next generation as we get more involved in politics. If our personal beliefs, religious beliefs, whatever they are, aren't going to benefit society as a whole, then we seriously need to reevaluate them. I believe we can have a bright future, but we must run away from religious extremism. We need to get away from Christian nationalism, and we need to get away from religion and government being too closely tied together. It is dangerous, and the history books tell us that it will end in a lot of pain. So, I would love to know what you think on Christian nationalism, on religion in general, and on how you think it has played either a positive role or a negative role in government. There's been a few good things religion has done, but for me personally, right, I'm a little biased because I grew up Christian and then I got out of it, and I'm very critical of religion. So for me, I'm going to be a little more critical on that, and I'm aware of that. But I want to know, what do you think about religion and government? How closely do you think it should be tied? Should it be like this, or should it be far apart? Because the only way we can really continue to grow as people is by learning, by coming together as a community and talking things out. I truly believe that you and me can change the world if we talk and approach everything with empathy and love and the betterment of society in mind. So, thank you all so much for watching. This is Gabriel. I'm signing off. See ya. Peace.